Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Oh, welcome to the show. Today is Monday and this is going out live on Mintwave Radio. You can ask Alexa if you have enabled the skill already. If this is via podcast, if you go to the website above, you can actually download the app for Apple and Android and see the schedule for the week ahead. So feel free to subscribe to any of the podcasts that are on there. There are currently 24. So follow any and leave a comment. Now, today's episode is 169, and today we have Adam Slawson, who is a coach and the founder of Plight Club. Now, we're going to be talking about how vulnerability is an evolutionary signal. I'm your host, Karen Roberts, helping coaches and therapists to get their message heard to the people who need to hear it. Now, Adam, he is the Plight Club founder and personal freedom coach, and he loves questions that make him go, wait, what? Connecting with people is central to his life, so he tries to push himself through the feeling of vulnerability whenever he can muster the courage, and it often opens interesting doors, he says. It's the golden ticket to life, and that is why Plight Club exists. He kickboxes, loves ecstatic dancing, going to the cinema, eating double fried egg chili chutney sandwiches. Oh, you're going to have to explain that one. And reading philosophy books while drinking decaf tea in bed. So welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I forgot I did that bio. That.
That is the most interesting one I think I had. It's a little bit different. Love it.
Good.
Would you like to share with the listeners a little bit really more about your personal story and how you came to be doing what you're doing now with Plight Club?
Yeah. So I think I have to start my story kind of halfway through it to an extent to give the main thing that happened. Is like in 2019, January 2019, I had an anxiety attack that was so bad I didn't sleep for 3 weeks, 2 hours a night for 3 weeks. I lost 7 kilos of weight, and I even turned this weird shade of grey. So it was bad, like, basically. And on the surface at work, I was functioning, I was doing the thing, but behind the scenes, it was all hell was broken loosely, and my mind just wouldn't give me any rest, any peace at all. And it was like that was the kind of the catalyst that accelerated my growth with regards to, I was like, right now I'm going to take this properly seriously. I'm going to do something about it. If you go back 5 years from there, it was a philosophy lesson where someone just said to me, I sense a knot in you. And I also, just with those words, I almost burst into tears. And I was like, what's that? That's weird. And that was the spark that kind of sent me on this journey. So that's about 10 years from between those things now. But so I've suffered from anxiety, or I don't identify with suffering from anxiety anymore. I believe anxiety and vulnerability it's something that my body knows that my head hasn't caught up with yet. And it's just it's an indication and tool that is, something's not quite right here. Your instincts are talking to you. You need to do some work, or need to do some emotional release, or talk to someone, whatever it might be. And that's the crux of why Plight Club exists, in essence. So I discovered that I wasn't really I thought I was talking about my feelings, but I wasn't really talking about my feelings. I would say how I felt, and then there'd be a big, long gump of words after it, which was cushioning the blow for other people. Turns out that's because of a fear of abandonment that I used to have, control of people's reactions, etc., etc. And so what I discovered was how powerful talking about your feelings are. And that's what Plight Club exists. It's all about this word that's on my shirt, which if I can get above it's about being a vulnerable. So it's rebelling through your vulnerability. And that's what I live by. And that's why I said it's about an evolutionary signal. It's like, when is your body talking to you and highlighting that, okay, this is where life is trying to connect with other people, or and as you push through vulnerability, you always feel amazing on the other side, or you feel something on the other side. And I believe the world needs more of that. And so that's what it's about.
Oh, 100% love it, because we have all been conditioned, and I would go as far to say as men even more so, to hide our feelings, especially here in the UK. I suppose from the war, it's all stiff upper lip and get on with it, deal with it, which I admit that was my sort of thought process years ago. Just think, deal with it. Very harsh to yourself, let alone to other people. But why do you think this has happened? Why do you think that as a society we have been conditioned? I know things are changing, but up till recent events that we have been conditioned to block our feelings, which was what was probably, sorry, that's my birthday balloon coming in there, which is causing, thank you, which was causing that not, interestingly enough.
I think it's easy to not do. Like it's like the safety feeling. We're addicted. I think our natural way of being as humans, if you go back into prehistoric times, is insecurity. And that's our natural way of being, because we didn't know where our food was coming from. We didn't know if we're going to get eaten by a tiger or something, that kind of stuff. So that was our but what over the course since then, to fast forward very quickly to now, is that we've become addicted to the feeling of safety. It's almost like decadence is the thing that it makes us too comfortable. And so when we become, and our phones particularly amplify that, because we've got an excuse to not interact with anyone in our pocket at all times, and it's so easy to get that dopamine. It's an addictive thing, and you pull it out whenever there's a moment where you're not engaging with someone. You pull out your phone because you've got something to do. And I think what that then does is enable you get that feeling that is, I feel safe now, and then that's a nice feeling. And then more and more you do that, you become trapped. You create your own container, and or your own prison would be a better way of putting it. And it just gets harder and harder to break out. And I think that we've, since the times of if you take the war as an example, like apparently, even though the war was obviously catastrophic and horrible things have happened, a lot of people said that during that time they really loved the camaraderie. They loved the feeling of togetherness, because we had like an enemy that we all agreed was the same enemy, and we all came together. And it's a bit like when in the 2012 Olympics, there was not that it was an enemy, but we all came together and there was a camaraderie around a big thing and I think that those things are what have contributed, not those things, but as in the lack of it and the ability to be by yourself has caused the problem or amplified the stiff upper lip.
And I suppose, like you say, they're distractions. Just people have got, years ago when I grew up, we had 3 channels. I can remember when Channel 4 came on. You didn't have so many choices of distractions. As a kid, unless it was Saturday morning cartoons, there wasn't really a lot you could. Now, I mean, goodness, I don't even have a TV in my house, but we've still got access to Netflix or Prime. There's just so many things to distract you from feeling. So it's this false feeling, perception of safety is false.
Yeah.
So we're distracted by it, either, like you say, on our phones or watching goodness knows what rubbish that is out there. Sorry, that's personal opinion.
Well, we don't have to wait for anything, do we? We don't have to wait and this is where the decadence is making, we're way too comfortable. Like I remember if I wanted music, I'd have to record. There was like the top 40. You'd have to record the music and like press stop, and you go, oh shit, I've got the advert or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, can we swear on this podcast? Because I just did.
Yeah, you're right.
Right, fine. So it might. I'm known for swearing a little bit, but it happens just to come out. But those things is for as soon as we get by ourselves, there's so many things that you can just grab onto, check your phone, Spotify, all the things. Like they can then work as a distraction, so you don't have to sit with your feelings. Or don't have to entertain yourself or find ways to entertain yourself. I used to have to go outside when I was a kid and play with sticks, in essence, to make stuff up, because there was nothing to do. I lived in a village and there was genuinely nothing to do. And I did get into some mischief and trouble doing that because of that, probably. But that was it was outside doing stuff. We had to make our own entertainment because there was genuinely nothing to do. And I think learn more interaction skills through doing that, for sure. But that bit of that feeling when you can feel that thing of, oh no, I feel alone right now, or I feel something, or I feel some social anxiety. I feel that it's like being able to learn to not reach for your phone, to break your own habits, is what vulnerability is about. Is to be able to say to someone, I'm not saying like just on the tube, you don't say, oh, I'm feeling lonely, but you could do. But if you're in a pub situation or a thing, a lot of people they don't say honestly how they're feeling. And I think that when people do that, they do say the authenticity, the energy and the vibration of how they're sounding, people just warm to it. It almost doesn't matter necessarily what you say. It's like, to an extent, but it's like the way you sound and the way you feel, people pick up on you, on the authenticity. And I think we've got so many tools that allow us to be inauthentic, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Like they put out a thing of what we think people want to see as opposed to who we are. And that's where my fear of abandonment and the controlling people's reactions to what I was saying is, like, I was saying what I think they wanted to hear as opposed to actually what I wanted. And that was not allowing my energy or the energy of the emotions to move how it should. And that's what causes anxiety in essence.
And I suppose if that's kept up, that's actually going to do a lot more damage than just making you feel lonely. Because like you said, if that was seen that you had a knot, it's this, I do think people are coming to terms with the fact that stress, you know, whatever you dress it up as, anxiety, fear, whatever it is, it's stress. At the end of the day, the body is releasing cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And that is, like you said, going back to prehistoric days, all the energy goes to the extremities, ready to fight, flight, freeze. And so things like digestion, healing the body, all the things aren't, well, it's an emergency. We don't actually need to do that right now because there's something here, whereas there isn't. You're just feeling anxious. But the physiological effect that's going on in the body is still happening. And I really think that hopefully people are starting to realize how damaging this can be on the body, not from just a feeling low, but damaging as in can cause some long-term ailments. Not going to happen overnight, but prolonged in that body of too much cortisol going on is, well, it's slowly killing us, isn't it?
In essence, yeah, for sure it is. And I think that the way I categorize, you've got stress and anxiety. I would say that they have an effect on the body, both of them. But I would say that anxiety, it's a made up word, obviously, that it's like, it's a symptom of something else. There's always something. And same with stress. It's a made up word. It's a symptom of there's something else underneath it. It's probably, I'm scared is probably with stress. It's like, I've got too much on. I can't handle it. Might be the thing that's going on. And the same with anxiety. I would say that's more of, for me anyway, is more of a feeling of, there's so many options. I don't know what to do. I feel chaotic and a bit like whirly. So the difference between the two. But one useful tip for the listeners is, and a simple thing to do, is that if you're feeling anxious, i.e. chaotic and a bit out of control, one thing you can start to do is just do something with order and process. So you could write a list. You could do a jigsaw. You could follow a recipe like to the letter. Walk in a straight line. Stand near something that's solid. That would really help you calm down and bring your energy down. But if you're feeling stressed, as in too much stuff to do, one thing you could do is do something creative with no rules. So paint an abstract picture, make a silly noise, do something that's in it. And that helps you. The creativity helps balance out the energy of the too much stuff to do. And that's going into masculine and feminine energy, or yin and yang energy, which depending on which way you look at it. But it really does work. It's a very simple thing to do.
It sounds, I suppose, it's like a distraction, but in a good way. It's distract from that moment. And I suppose what I just heard from you there, those tips, is like doing anything to keep you in the present moment and actually in your body. So focusing on something which hopefully is going to quieten the chitter chatter, because I suppose that's what it is, that could be part of it. So by the tips you've just shared there, great. Because, even if you're just focusing on where you're working, you're just focusing on the moment, on doing something in the now, so that you can't do both things at once. Is that where that sort of comes from?
Partly, you get something to occupy your mind so that your body can calm down, in essence. Because the way I describe it to people is that when I've just burnt my hand, burnt my hand just before I came on. I burnt my hands with some coffee. But I learned when I was a kid, when someone says don't touch that stove, it's hot. So at some point you touch the stove because you're inquisitive and you physically burn yourself, and you go, my body learns to not touch that thing again. That's great. But no one ever tells us that about a thought or a negative thought. negative thought. And so what happens in particularly with anxiety, and particularly if you're like me, I was very much a logic driven problem solver. If there's a problem, I'd fix it. But if it's an emotional problem, your head is not the right tool for the job. And so in doing that, the negative thought is very much like the hot stove. If you keep touching it, you get burned. You keep getting burned. And it's like the natural instinct is like on our egos, and doing its job is trying to keep us alive. It senses a problem, so it tries to fix it. But the fixing it is with the logic and trying to, I can work this out with my head. It's actually, no, what we need to do is, in essence, distract the mind, doing like writing lists, do all those things. And then your body will start to do its own thing and calm down but you're working with different energies if you want to go down the spiritual route as well.
I love it. So but this is it. We talked about we talk from things from a mental, physical, spiritual perspective. And I know you messaged me earlier, so it's emotional, which I would still put in the spiritual arena, because it is our feelings, our emotional feelings. People are now, I think, getting used to the fact that the mind connected to the body, there's definitely a connection. I think there's still, not everyone is totally understanding of the feeling connection. And I agree. I think it's the feeling that is the most powerful, because a thought is just a thought. You can allow it in, you can allow it to pass. It doesn't actually have to affect us. We put too much on thoughts. It's almost like a self-harm thing. It's like because we don't have to. Thought is just a thought, but we give it the feeling, don't we? Yeah. And it's, if that's going to create a negative feeling, then that's
perception
with vibration.
Yeah. And the perception is the meaning we give to something and that's where you're touching the hot stove. If you think, for me, I feel out of control, or this feeling in my body is really negative, so I've got to fix it. But if I just keep labeling it negative, it just keeps that spiral going. And so having the ability to be able to go, okay, and learn over time, it doesn't happen overnight, but to rewire the records that play in your brain with regards to those things, which is what my coaching is about, enables you to slowly but surely build your confidence and change. You essentially lift up the needle, move it to another place and create a new one. So when you have a trigger in your body, it doesn't mean the thing it used to, it means something else now. And so you don't go into the fight and flight reaction as you would have previously.
And like you said, it takes practice, never going to happen overnight. So how would you, people say this a lot, you've got to sit with your feelings, because I suppose as human beings, we naturally want to run away from pain. In fact, pain, or the avoidance of pain, is a stronger motivator, actually, for us than actually going for something that we want. And we all do it, myself included. But when we talk like that, it's really interesting when we can step back and look at that, because logically, that's a crazy thought, isn't it? Yet we do it. We all do it.
Yeah. I think that because you mentioned spirituality, and obviously because if you bring it down to and boil it down to what everything is made of, energy, and emotions are energy in motion. That's where the word comes from, and energy in motion. So when you start to practice this way of being and you start to accept that everything above energy is a human construct, like even the word energy is a human construct. It's all made up. Like we've made it all up. And so the quantum physics and spirituality are very much agreeing on this. In that sense. And so if you're a naysayer of spirituality or the more Eastern philosophies or the modalities, science agrees. And so Newtonian physics has just been kiboshed in essence by the prize last year, and saying that the quantum physics, there's a whole lot of stuff going on that we don't know anything about in essence. And that's what the spiritual community, like communities and stuff, have said for thousands of years. But when you start to go, okay, a thought just pops into, we aren't in control of our thoughts. It's just like a bubble machine. They just pop up. And I have some, I bet you do, but everyone does. We have some very weird thoughts at very inappropriate moments, right? And I think if there was, like in 1984, the thought police, most people would be everyone would be locked up, wouldn't they, in that things? But it's the perception and meaning. If there's a big difference, and this was a really big game changer for me, was like anger as an example. There's a very big difference between feeling anger and acting angrily. Like you might have the thought that, fuck, I really could kill that person, but you're not going to actually kill them. And I've been on a plane as an example, and I've sat near the door that you can open. No, you can't open when you're flying.
Please
But
don't.
I had to sit on my hands because I was fearful that I was going to open the door. Like I was like, this is one of my old angst. And I then realized, I found out a few years later that you can't actually open that door whilst flying. They have to flick a switch or something. But anyway, it's just to illustrate that it's like my mind was completely in this loop of, it's like I'm panicking because, and it just makes it worse. Keep touching the stove, and having the toolkit to be able to go, okay, baseline, is that like this feeling in my body is just energy that wants to move. If I label it as anger, sadness, joy, whatever, that's the second layer. So if I can then, a way to really become in touch with your emotions is to start seeing it as energy that wants to move. And so the way I describe that to people is, if you think of your heart and your body as a car engine, like what does a car engine need to work? What 3 things I'm after? What would you say?
Well, you need the starter, you need to ignite it.
Yeah. So
you need the fuel, the energy to move it, and so the ability to stop.
And the thing that like the fuel for sure. So it needs petrol of some sort. So our bodies need a decent fuel source. If you put diesel in a petrol car, it doesn't go well. So we need decent sources of fuel, and food and water and sunlight, human connection, all these things. That's our sources of fuel. If you have too much alcohol, as an example, that's like diesel in a petrol engine, but a little bit, that's okay. You go, that's fine. And then the thing that most people forget is that an engine needs an exhaust. If you can put your hand over the end, I'm not cover your hand if you do this, but if you put your hand over an exhaust and pushed it on and could keep it on, the car would stall. It would because it's not letting out the energy. And so humans are exactly the same. Like we need to have the mechanism of an exhaust, which is movement, talking in that sense, and then you can shout as well, so making bigger noises than talking. But when you connect with someone, you say how you feel, like what the amazing feeling that you get when they go, oh, I feel that too, or whatever. It's like how we might think of relationships. When you bond deeply with someone, yeah, okay, you bond over the good things as well, but the main times you build trust with someone is when you feel vulnerable and you go, I'm not really sure about this thing, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. And then they catch you, and then you feel so safe and feel so heard. And it's the energy's moving then how it's meant to move. And that's what Plight Club's founded on. The vulnerability catch ring is what I'll come on to in a minute. But just to finish off the analogy of the car engine, the thing that makes the engine move is the oil, which is the third thing, is our emotions. And that the emotions is what connects our head and our body. So if you see it like that, it's okay, I'm feeling a bit anxious or stressed. It's like, that simply means there's energy that needs to move. If you just at that moment just literally shook your body, you would feel better after the shake. It doesn't matter what, like for sure, you would feel better. I used to use exercise. My go-to thing was exercise. And I kickbox. When someone said to me, you're kickboxing 8 times a week, that's a bit much, isn't it? And I was like, so there's an element you can do it too much, but it was never getting to the root cause. That's what was happening. I was using it as a sticking plaster, and it made me level out, but I never got to the root cause. So I had to keep doing it. Some people shop, some people drink, some people, however, get their fix. But what you need to realize is if you're doing something to excess, there's highly likely there's something underneath that you need to look into. And it's the original trauma from probably somewhere in your formative years.
Oh, I've never heard it explained like that. That's brilliant. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there's things like the havening technique that it's all released because, you look at a little deer running away from a lion or something. It does. It's as it's run away. So stress, run away, shake, and then carry on eating as though nothing's happened. Us human beings, we tend to hold on to stress.
We skip the shaking bit, don't we? We just go, oh, I can't show that. But we slowly, as you said at the beginning, the way the world's changing, it's getting more okay to show your emotions. But there's some skills and tools and ways to move emotion that maybe is beginning to be taught in school, but it hasn't been taught in school. And I was certainly never taught it in school in that way of being. And having that ability to be able to notice, oh, okay, yeah, I'm feeling out of alignment. You mentioned like head, body, spirit, which is when things are aligned, you feel like the feeling of flow, the feeling of, okay, I feel good right now. I feel centered, not good. I feel centered. But when you're really happy or when you're really angry or really sad, you're out of center. And if you're anxious or you're really stressed, you're very out of center in that sense. It's probably scared underneath both those two things. And there's what this and what Plight Club's about in essence is learning the ability to be able to hold yourself in the whirlwind of that feeling and go, okay, what I call structure of interpretation is compromised. How I interpret things is compromised because I'm like upset in some way, or I'm very happy. You're still compromised slightly in that. And it's okay, I'm going to wait until my mud settles. I have the ability to do that so I can learn to respond to the world as opposed to react to it.
And there's the key.
Indeed.
The react. Most people, and I'm not putting blame, this is not a blame thing because they're not aware, because no one's taught them or haven't read a book on it, or they haven't just been made aware. So they're just responding to life. That's why so many people are, angry, react. And I'll put my hand up. I used to be very reactive until you are like, when you understand this stuff, then it, like you say, it's having tools in your toolbox. So your Plight Club is all about giving the tools to people to learn how to deal, because it's all okay. We put so much judgment on ourselves and put so much pressure on ourselves. But like I say, if you've got tools and toolkit to deal with it, it doesn't mean you're not going to react. We're human, but you will be able to. All those old sayings of count to 10.
It works. If you were to do that, count to 10, but breathe through your nose as you do it, then that's what I wasn't. Because you have two nervous systems. Your nose, as you breathe through your nose, it's your rest and digest, and that will calm you down. But what happens when we get shocked or get angry, you start to breathe through our mouth, and that's just fanning the flames. So third things first, have a good sniff, breathe through your nose into your belly and then into your chest, and that will immediately give you a bit of space. And what you're doing, what I call the choice gap, is you're just extending your ability to choose in the situation. And as you practice as you strengthen your vulnerability muscles, because that's why vulnerability is the center of things, because whatever emotion you're feeling, if you're feeling slightly insecure, vulnerability is the central thing to all of it. And so if you can learn to understand what vulnerability is properly and what's going on, you can be like, okay, you can start to, as I said, respond to life. And then your choice gap, as you exercise the muscles, gets bigger and bigger. Or your ability to, I had someone, it was actually at Christmas time, it was in a car situation, they cut me up, and to be fair, I did bib them 3 times a bit aggressively because they cut me up, and I was like, I didn't actually swear, I was like, oi. And then they eyeballed me and followed me, and I pulled over to go home, and they pulled in behind me, and then I went to, they got out of the car, 2 of them, and I got out of the car, and the guy squared right up to me, and he was going up like, what the F are you, in my face. I kickboxed for 20 years, so I can handle myself in those situations, so that has helped. But nothing happened violently, but my body inside was absolutely completely kicking off. But I managed to be able to calm the situation down because I was in my head, I was using the tools, I was staying calm, I was like breathing through my nose, and despite of all those things. And I coach people in this subject, so I'm relatively well versed and well practiced, and that's a very extreme environment. And I'm just using that as an example, that going from something that might upset you because someone changed the TV channel to the possibility of getting into a fight, there's a big spectrum in that. But it starts with the little things, and that's where and this is where vulnerability, this t-shirt bit, comes about. And the clothing, what it does is opens up conversations for you. So someone will say, because all the t-shirts and the hats and whatnot, they're conversation starters. And so when someone says, what's Plight Club? And then you go, oh, it's all about vulnerability, and it's all about deeper human connection. Your conversations then get deeper more quickly. And so it encourages you to be more vulnerable simply by wearing it. And then also people are brought to you because they're attracted to not know or want to be this intriguing. And so your life gets richer. But in doing that, you're then started to flex your vulnerability muscles, which then you're on the train to transformation, because you'll find that you want to do more of that.
Brilliant. We've jumped ahead there. So let's go back a bit. You have Plight Club.
Yeah.
But you also have a clothing brand. So Not sure that the listeners might have got lost a little bit there on the t-shirt. So can you first explain specifically what Plight Club is, and then explain in a little bit more detail about your clothing?
Plight Club is the clothing brand.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
clothing brand. So yeah, it's called Connection Clothing in essence. So the whole point of Plight Club is that we're united by vulnerability and fueled by freedom. So the idea being of, as I just explained, that it's all about the word vulnerability. So when you start to get on and understand what it is, it becomes addictive. It becomes a game. Life starts to become more fun, more enjoyable, more of a game. Even the negative emotions, I'm doing air quotes for those that are on the radio, and you can go, oh, that's that thing. Oh, and you start, as I said before, you start to lean into it. It's just energy wanting to move. How can I move it? How can I push myself? How can I go to the emotional gym, as I call it? But the clothing brand itself is set up so that 50% of the profits from it pay for 25% go to a suicide prevention charity. And because the worst end of not talking about how you feel is people take their life. That's that. So there's a load we can do. I feel there's lots of reactive mental health care out there, which is brilliant. It's wicked. But I think there's preventative stuff we could do as well and catch it way earlier than when it's caught by the reactive stuff. And then the other 25% go to pay for coaching that perhaps for people that can't afford it, and also for emotionally expressive experiences is what I call them. So I've got various different things that raise awareness around vulnerability that enable people to say how they feel and move emotion through their body.
Brilliant. So it's a bit of an all-in package that you're offering. So you are a coach, but the Plight Club, so forgive me, I was thinking the Plight Club as your coaching program, but it's the actual brand of your clothing, which is designed to spark a conversation.
Exactly that. Yeah. And so the goal of it is to create a global network that is of people that are there for each other, in essence. So if you just to put it into context, if you imagine Nike, but their logo represented love, connection, vulnerability, I'm up for a chat, I'm human, I make mistakes, all that kind of things. That's what Plight Club represents. So if you're on a tube and you saw someone wearing a hat or a t-shirt or whatever, you would know that they're more open to a conversation. That's what. And so if you were having a hard day, you could say to that person, I recognize that brand, I'm having a bit of a hard time, can we have a chat? And they would be I'm sure they'd be more open to it because they understand what Plight Club's about. So I'm trying to take coaching.
Oh my goodness, love it. Oh, yeah. I didn't. Forgive me, Adam. I hadn't got that totally in my head. Right, there you go. Do you know what? And we have spoken before, right? Many times. But isn't it funny? This is why doing things like this is so important, because on paper, read your bio, not necessarily totally understand that until you get onto something like this and ask specific questions. And there you go. It just comes from actually being inquisitive, being curious, because people are just not curious enough because they don't feel that they can be. That's actually pretty cool. Because yes, I can see that, like you said earlier about sitting on the train, maybe you could admit to people that you're feeling lonely, but I get it now. If they were to see somebody, if this brand grew and you knew, because that's the trouble, I suppose. This is the sad thing. And especially, I'm going to say it, I would say it's more a male thing because of the societal pressures maybe that have been put on them to deal with it kind of attitude. Yeah. So for them to see somebody with that item of clothing, you're creating a safe space through a clothing brand.
Yeah. Idea is to create containers. That's what the idea is. So people can connect through them, whether it's one-to-one, as in two people, obviously a group of people getting together as a Plight Club could be that too. But the bit, I was going to say something about connecting. What was I going to say? Oh no, next question. Sorry, I forgot.
That's just such, I've never heard of anything like that actually. And so it's really a conversation starter, and you're creating a safe space. If somebody was out in the public and just saw somebody, they'd feel safer to open up a conversation. But then obviously you have your coaching program where you facilitate, I suppose, these get-togethers. So, is that right?
Yeah, so they're intrinsically linked because the goal of both is to enable people to find personal freedom. So this is where the evolutionary step that I was on about is. And oh yeah, that's the point I was going to make. The main target market, yes, it is men, but it's women as well. So it's a unisex brand, and all the all the people in between, men and women as well, just to caveat that. And what we need, if you think about this, if I boil it down, like men I'm going to speak from my own point of view. I am a very simple creature in that context. It's like with women particularly, like what we need our women to do is stop putting up with shit behavior from men. And I know that's easier to say than do, but because some love is better than no love, right? But what we need women to be able to do is go, oh, you can't talk about your emotions yet. I really like you, but come back when you can. Because in that, then we start to make an evolutionary step, because then men will go, what? I need to learn to talk about my emotions. They'll be very quick to learn how to talk about their emotions because they want to connect with people deep down. And so that's what we want to encourage people to be able to do. Men being the target market in the sense of enabling them to talk about their feelings with the tools and the language, and women too, because they also, not all of them can talk about how they feel, but they are better in general because society hasn't beaten it out of them, which a lot of men I work with are just essentially numb from the neck down. Like that it's all logic based. They're in and they just don't feel like, and that's a real sad. And I was one of those men too. So I do feel way more now, and my connection with my partners in the last few years has been like exponentially different to how it was when I was younger. It's crazy. Like when you start to talk about your feeling, men and women, connection between you with your partner is so much better. So if you're looking for a reason to go onto this journey of finding personal freedom, that if that's not enough, do you need anything else in that sense?
No, it's all, everything in life is about relationships, whether that's family, partner, your business. It doesn't matter. If your business to business, it doesn't matter. You're human to human. It's all about the relationships you have with yourself, as well as with others. And so it's actually all about that.
And the coaching bit of things like this, the journey from going from when I had my knot in me, like that I mentioned about 10 years ago, like I've been on an experimental journey over the last 10 years, trying various, spiritual practice, you name it, I've done it. Like I've done psychotherapy, I've done loads of different things, and read a lot about quantum physics, read a lot about philosophy and spirituality, and but pieced together that, I can understand there's an element of a formula or stages to this. And it's not an exact science, but they roughly break down into what I call liberation, which is the first one. So it's understanding what we've spoken about, the trauma trigger cycle, how the body works, that the emotions are energy in motion and they're stored in our body. And that once you understand that, you start to increase your choice gap. When the next stage is what I call acceptance, and it's like acceptance of what is. And like I can explain to you, and you will cognitively understand it about the energy of the universe and all those things, but it's going, when you really accept it, it goes into your body. And so it's like we have two stages of learning, which is our mind understands it, and then our body understands it, and then that's it. So it's that we're getting at. And then the final stage is where things start to get really deep down the rabbit hole, is I call magnetism, right? And so this is where personal freedom really starts to kick in, because if you think about, I use the analogy of a wire. So if you think of a wire and what happens when you put more energy through a wire, two things happen to it. It gets hot and becomes slightly magnetic. And that's what's happening to humans. Like we are essentially energetic beings. And the more, when we have what I call kinks in our hose pipe, which is traumas, they are blocking the flow of the energy. And so when you have an anxiety attack, it's essentially like someone just taking the kink out of the hose pipe really quickly, and all the energy just shoots through, and it's overwhelming. So you very quickly put the kink back in to feel safe again. So the coaching that I do essentially helps people like massage out those kinks so that the flow can come through, but bit by bit, and then slowly but surely you start to feel way more alive and you've got more energy coming through you. But when you do that on a quantum physics level, you will start to vibrate a different vibration, and the life that was meant for you will come towards you. So you can start to let go of, in essence, it's just not try so hard. You don't have to try at life. Try at life. So, you have to achieved. You can be a human being as opposed to a human doing. And I know that's easy to say, but for the listeners that it might be like, whatever, but it's true. And it's just taking the step onto it is the first thing. And that's why Plight Club exists. Is like, how do you encourage people en masse to take this step? And so some people wear the Plight Club brand because they totally understand everything I just said. Some people will wear the brand because they just like it and it's cool. And so it's, and if, even if they're wearing it and they get the ethos of it, they will be having deeper conversations. So they will have started their journey of change. It's just how quickly do they want to like transform, is that, and it's up to them. It can be accelerated in that way. And that's the reason the Plight Club's profits go to pay for coaching and experiences, because I totally understand that coaching can be expensive. And I think there's a social injustice in the world. And what we don't need is another them versus us versus them. There's a big problem in the world of I am this, therefore I am not that, and I don't like that. And so with the coaching side of things, there's a whole swathe of people that are taking on the coaching, they're going on this journey, and there's a lot of people that aren't. And I believe that we need to address that balance, because we need the multi-diversity of everyone in the world, not that just those that can afford to get coaching, because that's gonna, if you think of pedigree dogs, that's likely what will happen in that context. We want a big diversity, a big mix, and I don't think money should be a thing that stops people getting this information.
No, this is, I've always thought this should all be, and even quantum physics should be taught in schools, because the next generation, it's all start, mind you, you'd be able to have a job, Adam. You'd have to just grow your clothing brand, because, but this is it, isn't it? It's the more, and I do think, like you said earlier about this, science is now proving this, thanks to the likes of people like Joe Dispenza, who in their events, they're measuring the energy. They're actually proving and showing what's happening to the brain when they do these certain meditations. So they're, rather than it being this Eastern philosophy, which weirdly, yet they actually got right 3,000 or whatever years ago, and we're just starting to play catch up. But I think it's important for the masses. And like you say, a lot of men are very logical thinkers. So they might be thinking, oh, that's hogwash. But because they're bringing the two sides together and proving it,
amazing,
it's amazing, because people will then be a little bit more, the ones who are very logical will be, oh, actually, look, there's scientific proof here. There's research being done, and they're proving the changes that you can make in your body by bringing it together. So yeah, what you're doing is it sounds like you're bridging the gap there.
Yes, I think, yes, in essence. And I think that one way to describe it and I'll have to verbalize it, I'll use my hands as a gesture for the screen, but I'll also say it. Like when we're born, let's say we're born into a capacity to feel that's 100%. And so the things that happen in our early years, traumatic, there's varying degrees of trauma, and but a trauma to a child, it could be, if a cushion's put next to you and you get scared of it, that could be a trauma. But obviously there's some really dark traumas as well. But what happens is our ego does its job and keeps us safe and just limits our capacity to feel, because we can't deal with that, and we don't have the emotional intelligence at that time. So what happens is things happen. So 100%, then it goes to 90% with one instant, then maybe 85%, then maybe something really big happens and it drops to 60%. And it's okay, and it keeps dropping and dropping, and to the point where your capacity to feel is quite narrow. And if you think of, the way I explain it is, if you think of that as a thermostat in the house, you've got the thermostat controller, which is your brain, and you've got the heating system, which is your body, right? A thermostat works fine when it comes on at 18 degrees and goes off at 23 degrees. There's lots of space for the energy to move, let's say the heat to rise. But if it comes on at 20 degrees and goes off at 21 degrees, there's not that much space. But the real problems that will happen where it comes on at 20 degrees and goes off at 20 degrees, then you're in a meltdown loop. That's when you're having an anxiety attack, essentially, like, and it's your body just kind of malfunctions. It's a bit like when you have the blue screen of death on a computer. Like I think that's a computer having an anxiety attack. I can't code, it's going down. That's basically what happens. Or the spinning wheel on a Mac is, oh no, can't code, can't deal with this, I'm out. That's essentially the same thing. Our bodies are having an anxiety attack. But so what happens, and for me, like life will you'll either decide to make the change, or life will make you make the change. So yeah, anxiety attack in 2019 was my catalyst, right, dude, because I got diagnosed. Just before that, I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, so my body was not happy. And I'm relatively fit. I've kickboxed for 20 years, so that's just for everyone's memory. Like, arthritis is not just an old person's disease. I was 35 and I got diagnosed with it, which is and now I don't have it. So
interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, so through processing, I'm not saying that's going to work for everyone, and but I've done a lot of work of releasing emotions, and there is a definitely school of philosophy that disease is dis-ease. So emotions linked to body traumas, and there's loads of people that are way more smarter about that subject than me, so I'll let them do that bit. But the point I was making was that life will make you make the decision to change, or you can actively make that decision yourself. And at that moment, like, life will start to bring you people and circumstance to highlight where you're not free, right? That's a quote by Peter Crone, and he's brought that from Buddhism and various different, and Taoism and different modalities. But life is the circumstances in that happening in your life at this exact moment are trying to teach you a lesson. It's, are you able to listen and be awake to learn the lesson and try something, or do you want to stick in your old behavioral patterns, or do you want to try something different? And that's what I call positive disruption. It's, so when you can see a behavioral pattern kicking off, you can then have a choice to be able to change it. It's when, at the moment, for like my anxiety for most of my life was a behavioral pattern. I had no idea it was going on. It was all in my subconscious, or some even deeper when it's like completely repressed emotions. But then what we have is like the life will bring you people and circumstance to highlight where you're not free. So when you're having an overly emotional reaction to something, that's a clue that you're not free there. So, okay, that is, you might not know what's going on underneath it, but you've got getting the clues. So start living that question. And then what you do is you change your mindset from a fixed mindset to a more growth mindset, and you become more curious about these things. And then slowly the answer will be brought to you. And I know that might sound a bit hippie and a bit woo-woo at this stage, but it is exactly what's happening. It's 100% what's happening to everyone on the entire planet.
Yeah.
But how do we get this message out on a grand scale? And that's what the mission of Plight Club, in essence, is.
Oh, brilliant. And you said it there again. It is about getting curious, asking because who's listening? You're in they say ask and it's given, but you've got to ask. We don't ask. We don't get curious about our own, how we're feeling. And I suppose that's where it starts.
It's because what a useful tip is that humans hate not knowing. Like, it's the worst feeling ever. Like, and we always like to, is it a yes or a no? We like to know where our boundaries are, but maybe is an answer as well. Like, not knowing. There's a very famous book by Alan Watts called The Wisdom of Insecurity. And there is such wisdom in insecurity. So and that's the vulnerability thing. When you feel slightly insecure, that's life talking to you, and it makes you feel alive. We've just labeled as a negative thing, but you feel way more alive. And David Bowie quote was something like, if you're swimming and you just can't quite touch the floor, or you feel like you can't just quite, that's the right place to be. That's the bit that makes you feel alive, zesty for life, and things are going on, because you don't quite know. It's just that we're addicted to knowing because of the phones and the whatnot and all that kind of thing. And it's like the safety of knowing is killing us.
Yeah, but even then, it is like you say, it's a myth. Haven't we learned that in the last 3 years, that actually we were never in control? So that feeling, like I think you said right at the beginning about this, we are addicted to this safety. It's a perception. That's all it is, because it didn't exist, did it? It was taken away from us instantly, and we had no control over it, which just goes to show that we don't have. This is a perceived feeling of safety that we're all trying to avoid coming out of. But like you say, that's where the magic happens. That's where, it's all unknown. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We do not know.
If you want to go, for the listeners to go big on this, let's go there. Like, in the world isn't in a good place. That's a very much a caveat, but I don't mean reductionist statement, but the financial system is on the ropes. And so what has been a perception of safety for the last X amount of time is wealth. And that's why there's a thing why people, but I'm just going to stick with men want to drive fast cars. They want to have the watch. They want to have the suit to give off the air that they have wealth, so that would attract a mate. That's what's happening on the base level. Okay. But what I believe is the currency of the future is going to be adaptability. And can you hold space emotionally for someone? Because if the financial, or when the financial stuff, and we go into real chaos in the world, we saw what happened with COVID and even the petrol crisis and things like that. If that goes, imagine that times 100. The people that are going to be able to get through that are those that can manage their emotions. There's going to be a lot of people that can't, and there's going to be a weird time, a grey area where there's a lot of people reacting and hurting people and doing all sorts of things. But those that will come through it will be the ones that can be able to being able to extend their choice gap and be able to respond to situations as opposed to react to them. So my question to people that are listening is, do you want to be a person that's able to talk about your emotions and hold space in that way, or do you not? Like, and it's a yes or no question. And there are loads of people out there that are trying to help and do all those things. And that's what the essence of what Plight Club's about, enabling people to have the currency of adaptability in life.
Ooh, brilliant. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna, to survive, you're gonna have to find a way. But not only that, because that's even I must try and do this because of, but actually you're gonna feel so much better.
God,
I think
yeah,
earlier you mentioned about just being.
yeah.
Again, we're in such an action-based universe, everything we've got to do. And I get it, and I'll be the same. I think, oh, I've got to control this, I've got to do. Actually, everything that's come about with me has come when I call it, I'm practicing being. It's like, Karen, shush, because I talk a lot. Shush, shush.
Yeah.
But it's in that stillness, but we're so unused to being in that stillness.
And yeah, we fear it. Like, we totally do. It's because it's just a feeling of, I don't know what's going on. And it's like, oh, okay. And also the addiction of the dopamine and all that stuff that we have, and that constant being on, is something that we need to unlearn that behavior. And slowly but surely, for example, if you have blue ticks on your WhatsApp, turn them off immediately. That's 100% one thing you can do, because that creates a micro anxiety that causes you stress. If you have pop-ups on your home screen of your phone, do it so it comes in. This is an iPhone, but do it so it comes down in your information center. So you have to go to your messages as opposed to them constantly coming to you. Because every pop-up is like, bing, I want your attention, bing, I want your attention, bing. And it's do one. Like, one of the most important things is, this is where I've got a post to send tomorrow about boundaries. It's like, your energy is a currency that, like, and what's taking your attention is taking your energy away from it, right? And there's only a certain amount of energy that you can put into your body through a sense of fuel, as in food, during the day. But if you're over burning, i.e. burning the candle at both ends, it's coming from somewhere, which is probably deep within your body, which all it's doing is bringing you the end of your life closer towards you. And so learning to be like, hold, actually, my energy and my boundaries of what comes out of me and also what comes into me are the most important thing, because I want to create a sense of serenity, in essence, as much as possible in my own body, through eating the right stuff, through processing your emotions, because then you're vibrating, as we talked about, at the frequency that you're meant to vibrate at, and life starts to come to you that is a much more, I don't know, it's just peaceful. It's more the one that was meant for you. It feels right and it feels alive and that's what personal freedom coaching is about. It's about finding an ability to be able to feel free in your life and connect deeply with people. And the life just it's like Willy Wonka's golden ticket to life, in essence. It makes life so exciting. It doesn't make it good all the time, but it makes it, if you can get to a point where you can feel happy because you're sad, as in because you're feeling sad, but you're happy about the fact that you're feeling sad. Whereas before I wouldn't feel sad, I would just go out and party instead, or avoid it, or whatever.
Avoid it.
But now sitting with the sadness and being able to cry through it and be there. And for a man, I know it's really hard. It's hard to do. And I'm still unlearning my body's natural reaction to not crying. I'm much better crier now than I was, but there was times where I went 5 years without crying. And that's unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
We need to cry. We need to show up. We've got, I think, a 7-lane motorway of emotions, and we need to, but all of them are welcome.
Use them. Yeah. There's no bad. They're all just are. They are. They just are.
Yeah. They're just energy.
So the listeners.
Yes.
For the listeners, if they're seeing this on the video, all your info is down below. But anybody who's just listening in, how do they get in touch with you? How do they get hold of your clothing?
So clothing is plightclub.co.uk. If you just Google Plight Club, and Plight is Plight. And for the people that don't know what plight means, I had to Google it initially, was that it means an arduous journey, like a difficult experience, a bit like life at times. So Plight, Plight Club. And it's Plight Club HQ on Instagram. And then for my coaching website, if you just Google Adam Slawson, but it's adamslawson.com. and you'll get through to the coaching site, and it's all interlinked. So if you find one of them, of course, you'll get through. Everything comes through to me at this point in time. Yeah, that's the ways to get in touch.
Fantastic. You love what you're doing. It's needed. Yes, I think we are. I'm sure I've been told I'm here to guide and heal. I quite like that. That we need more people here to, yes, because things are going to get tougher, and dealing with your emotions. Many run away from it, but it's all about healing.
If anyone's listening that wants to try it, like I do a monthly Discover Personal Freedom workshop, and so that can be found on Eventbrite, but it's also found through my website, and that's £10 or £20 depending on what you can afford. That's a way to get a bit more information on this. So a lot of people say, I don't know where to start, and I've just given you the first step. That is, you've got no excuses now. In essence, that is the first step. It's not going to cost you very much at all. So it's try it and then see if it's for you. And from there, by just making that initial step, life will start to help you along this journey for sure.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a fascinating talk today, actually.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great. So get in touch with Adam, and the rest of you, I'll be back tomorrow with a coffee with Karen. Bye for now.
All right. See you later.
Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a